welcome all to the Snail Trail 4x4 podcast. If you like going off-roading in Toyotas, wrenching on Toyotas, camping in Toyotas, and maybe even poking a little bit of fun at Toyotas, and of course, hearing about how great it is to pull Jeeps out of places with Toyotas, thanks to this guy, then this is the podcast for you. That's right, ladies and germs. My name is Tyler, and joining me for another episode of the Snail Trail 4x4 podcast is the one and only Jizzle Jet. That's not what it was. It was Jizzle James. Sorry. Sorry. That's another conversation we're having off there.
Yeah, that's a new one for me. Thank you very much. Yeah. Don't know if you asked me, but I'm doing fine. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Oh, man. Yeah, the KOH prep is going along nicely, and I'm still wiring a trailer. So,
okay.
Good times.
Right now, you're probably driving down to the lake bed, though.
Monday, yes. Well, it depends on what time you release it. I know sometimes you like to release at 4:20 a.m.
I try to get them all out at that time.
I'm not driving down that this time.
Okay.
Then. Yeah.
You're sleeping.
I'm sleeping
packing.
right now. Yeah, I'm probably sleeping right now. I should be up soon, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh, man. Yeah, dude, we have a fun episode here today. We got to sit down with a good buddy of ours who has been on the podcast before, but never live in the studio like this.
Right. Apparently, he's been on a few podcasts before and never in person.
Nope.
So,
nobody likes actually like looking at him, apparently.
Yeah. I guess not. He's not a bad looking gentleman. I don't know what's wrong with those other podcasts.
I don't know. They're weird. I think they're.
We know they're weird.
Well, yeah, true.
But yeah, we had a fun, long conversation with them. So I think we'll keep some of the housekeeping short and we'll jump into the interview here in a little bit. But we have, is it still rope roller cam time? I believe it is. So we still have at least a few more days for you guys to get into the roller cam giveaway. Our monthly giveaway is with them. We have a variety of sizes of roller cam straps for you guys to tie down all your gear and everything onto your vehicles while you cruise down to KOH. We've got a few 2-footers, 3-footers, 5s, 6s, 15s. I think there's a 50, and there's the rope rollers in there, which is their new release, which works with the paracords and has around a 35 foot-pound tensile strength, I think is what it was. Yep. Really cool stuff. Value around $160. So thanks for donating those. And you can get in over on iRate 4x4. Go down to the watch, listen, and discuss section, click on the Snail Squad, and the sign up options are down there if you want to get in for the giveaway.
Sweet. I like it. Nice, short, and sweet. We still have, of course, the reviews for giveaways. So go check those out over at Apple Podcasts, Apple Tunecast, and leave a review for the show under Snail Trail 4x4 on Apple. And you can get entered. Every review you leave gives you one entry into a multitude of giveaways. We got a bunch of swag packs we're doing, and we have a set of tires, pretty much of your choosing, from Yokohama Tires over there on that giveaway. So go do that. That's going to keep going until we hit 750, and we're doing the swag packs every 50. So 600, Absolutely. 650, 700, and then a set of tires.
Oh, let's see. We 7 p.m. across from the main gate on Wednesday. Yep. If you want to do the night run up Fisher with us, depending on whether we may or might not call that, but I think we're still going to try to meet up, say hi to people, shake some babies, and kiss some hands.
There you go.
Depending on whether we'll commit to going up the mountain or not.
Yep. So yeah, Fisher Wednesday night run. That's always a fun one if it's not storming. So we'll see how that goes. We'll make the call that night. Yeah, this is KOH week. So Jimmy and I are heading down on Monday, the day this releases. Jimmy might be heading down the day before on Sunday, but
maybe. Yeah.
You may already be down there.
I might.
Yeah, man.
Maybe.
So we'll get some good stuff for you guys. We have a couple of episodes planned to record while we're down there, and then a lot of other things going on that we will fill you in on next week once we're back.
That sounds good.
Cool. Is there anything else?
Nope, I don't think so. I say let's jump on over.
Sounds good, because we have Nick Bailey in the house today. So we're going to learn from Nick a little bit about the ins and outs of Ultra 4 racing logistics, which I found fascinating. So,
yeah, there was definitely a lot of hidden information there that I think anybody that is a crew chief would probably learn a few lessons from.
Yep. Yeah, some cool stuff going on. So we got him here for today's campfire discussion, hanging out and giving us all the secrets to Randy Slauson's race program. Just kidding. There's not really many secrets there, but it's some pretty good info. So hang on, grab your favorite drinks, grab your favorite candy, and we'll be right on back with today's campfire discussion with Nick.
Are you tired of landing in potholes and bouncing off obstacles? To play at your full potential, correctly tuned coilovers allow you to float over the rocks and gain more traction. At 4-Wheel Underground, our full suspension systems include custom-tuned coilovers for your specific application. To learn more, visit 4wheelunderground.com.
Oh, welcome back, ladies, gentle ladies, kids, animals, pet sperms, all the pet sperms of the world.
Jizzles.
All the little jizzles of the world. We're going to need to explain that one later, maybe. Maybe not. Maybe you guys can just use your imagination. We are here in the studio, though, today with Guy from the mountains. He's kind of our residential mountain man here. He loves San Francisco, though, and especially Southern California. We have Nick Bailey back on the show from Avalanche Technical. And of course, Jimmy, as always. But Nick, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, boys. It's nice to finally be in the studio. Never got this official before.
Yeah, you don't get this kind of treatment over on with those wheeling and whining people, huh?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I'm working on them. You know, I got them out in a Toyota just last weekend, so we're finally getting them over to the dark side.
Does he feel like he has cooties now? Did he have to take a hot shower afterwards?
It might have started that way, but you know,
started with cooties.
Yeah, let's see.
I think there's more to this story than you're going to tell us.
Yeah. All I know is he rode in the Toyota all day. The Toyota took no straps, and I may have pulled out a Jeep or two. So
yeah,
I like it.
And so I think the one time he's ridden in the 4Runner, we were coming down the steps on the other side of the bowl on the Rubicon.
Yep. And
I just put it in low. And just crawled and creeped and crawled my way down. He was complaining so much.
Yeah. Well, that's the nice thing about snowmobiling, right? Is that pays off sometimes. And we were going up. We were leading at one stretch. We were out with Harry Wagner. He had his first, what did he call it? Inaugural snow invitational, snow wheeling invitational. And at one point, it was cool because it was open to everybody. At one point, we came to a Y, and his recommendation was that anybody 37s or greater, you can go this way. Otherwise, come with me and we'll go this way. We'll stay kind of low in the valley. And so where we made the split, then my Toyota, when it's not on tracks, is on 37s currently. And but I kind of led that group up the mountain. You know, we haven't had a real big winter or anything, so it wasn't anything too crazy. But yeah, so we led that group up and got to show Jason some some crawling features of the Toyota and talk about all the theory and the different snow types. And it's good.
Yeah, snow types is a big part of it, right?
Sure.
There's a lot of people that are like, no, you just need this type of tire. You just need to run this much pressure. And it's like, no, you got to know what snow you're dealing with.
Totally.
Yeah. It's and being able to know that and figure it out throughout the day, because it changes throughout the day as well. That's always fun. So
that's a perfect application of the more you know, the more you don't know scenario. Because whenever you hear someone say something like that, it's like, oh, I remember my first time snow wheeling too.
I just put it at 0 in the tires and
just go.
Yeah.
That's a good place to start.
Right? It's a lot of people start at 10, maybe work their way down to 5, maybe down to 3. It's like, well, just start at the bottom. And then you can't go down anymore.
What if you don't have air in your traction things?
Your traction
already starting at 0.
Yeah, there you go. I guess that's true.
Yeah.
So
then
pretty much you're running tracks.
Kind of.
Yeah.
It just bubbles.
Well, I was with Jay Barry at the trailhead, like you said, and he he's like, dude, what are you airing down to? I was like, I'm going right to 5. And he's like, really 5? Like, do you think we're going to need it? And I was like, well, I know that I won't be airing down again.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Right.
when everyone else at the breaking point was dicking with their tires again, I was still just driving.
Yep. Yeah. I usually start snow trips at 2 and go from there. And people are like, why are you that far down? I was like, so I don't have to mess with it anymore.
Yeah.
No doubt. I think on 40s for sure. I'd be right there with you.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. We're not here to necessarily talk about snow wheeling. If it ends up going that way, because we might end up getting into ski doing a little bit here later. But
Sure.
Ski doing on tracks?
No, ski doing on a lake.
Oh,
okay.
I must have missed something earlier.
Well, we'll talk about it. That might come into the discussion later here.
Sea doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
jet skiing.
Okay,
with sea-doos on a lake in the next couple weeks.
But you probably could ski do there too.
Anyways,
I need a wetsuit.
Yeah,
at least.
Yeah. No. So Nick, one of the fun roles that you have, you run Avalanche Technical, which is dealing with helping people get things out of the snow and reading and being able to know kind of snow weather conditions and informing certain people about incoming weather patterns and other things.
Sure.
And then you're a project manager.
Yes, sir. Yep. Everyone's got to have a desk job, right? At some point in their life. And I try to stay away from it as much as I can, but yeah, sometimes it's a nice way to, make things meet and fill in the time between more fun activities. Yeah. Like we'll be talking about today.
Mm-hmm. And then do you have any other fun hobby, passion things you do other than what we were going to be talking about today?
Probably.
Yeah.
But I understand
you like to go on 4,200 mile road trips.
Oh yeah. Yep. As far as the, today, I guess it's getting to be KOH time.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounded like maybe there was some interest in the racing side of KOH and what it takes to get a team together, huh?
Yeah, definitely. I think that there's a lot of great information out there from, race team owners, the race car drivers themselves, maybe co-drivers, about what it's like to maybe prep a vehicle and get the vehicle on the race course, what the race is like that day.
Sure.
I don't know if I've heard too many podcast episodes about what goes on behind the scenes while those people are out on the race course all day.
Sure.
And so like what happens with a top tier race team and their pit crews and logistics, and how does all of that come together to get the car to succeed that day during this train wreck of a course?
Right.
And you happen to be the crew chief for Randy Slauson.
Yeah. That is one of my longest running volunteer roles I've ever had in my life. It's been very, very rewarding. So yeah, anybody, lots of listeners probably have met Randy and run into him on the trail, right? Mm-hmm. Summertime, he's on the Rubicon a lot, stuff like that. And yeah, we run a pretty lean and mean race program, but has been successful, right? 2021 was Randy's last victory. So that's the only one as crew chief that I've been a part of, right? He's had success as well in 2013 and 15. And while I was at KOH during both of those years, Randy didn't live here in Nevada. I hadn't met him yet.
Okay.
So
didn't still living in SoCal then?
Yeah. And I think he had just moved right in or around the time of the 15 race. But we hadn't crossed paths up until that point. But ever since we did, somewhere in 2016, started helping out with his program because his, the Bomer hangar is only about 30 minutes from my house in State Line, South Shore, Tahoe. So yeah, kind of became, I think I slid into those DMs and kind of became fast friends, helped him at races for a couple of years. And then, people are always kind of moving around and priorities are changing. So at one point, I saw the opportunity to get involved kind of at a higher level and, made the offer and he took me up on it. And now this will be the 5th or 6th year with this, the current arrangement, trying to help him run a KOH winning race program. Yeah, it's been great. And I did the motocross thing when I was younger. I raced ATV, four-wheeler motocross in Southern California, varying levels, kind of up to the professional level, but that sport was just never that big. And it kind of peaked during my racing career, at least on the West Coast. Always been big in the North and the East Coast. And, but we had a couple nationals right around the time that I was 17, 18 years old. So it was cool. And it was great to be a part of. And I always really liked it. But at some point figured out that, at that time I had just started college, and I realized that if I was going to get a degree and, kind of move my life in the direction that it probably ought to go, that continuing to race for motocross was not the best choice. It was hard to do both. So I decided to finish school, and once got all that done and kind of settled in, had a career and all that, start making some money, was feeling the itch to get back involved. So a lot of my friends from high school, I knew 2 guys in high school that started Armada Engineering in Southern California. They've been building trophy trucks and spec trucks and play cars for over a decade. Got involved with them and some of their customers, and we've raced everything. Score, Baja 500, San Felipe, Baja 1000s. They built the Glickenhaus boot car that was an old Steve McQueen rear engine GM V8 4-wheel drive race car. And we raced that 3 times in the Baja 1000 over the last 3 or 4 years. Faced off with Team Ford in the Bronco twice and beat them twice. Nice. That was pretty awesome. And then during all this, Randy and I were hanging out, and since the desert racing typically wasn't overlapping with KOH, there were several times I would go to Parker. We'd race the Parker 400, and then right after the 400, just drive right across the desert there and wind up at Johnson Valley. So, so been around desert racing quite a bit, been around, some teams that are high buck, helicopter and 40, 50 man crews. And then, trying to bring as much of that experience as I can to make Randy's thing work, which has certainly been successful, but is coming at it from a completely different, set of parameters. And it's cool. Like everything, just like the cars, they're lean and mean and, highly effective. And I like to think that our race program is similar.
Did you work a lot with, you're talking about the Baja 1000 40, 50 man crews. What was your involvement with those? Were you doing crew chief kind of stuff or coordinating operations at all? Or
yeah, so I didn't get too involved with the logistics with those races because between Armada and Elliot Pollock, the guy that owns Armada now, he kind of would run the show, which is perfect, right? Because I always had something else going on. And then I typically took, it would almost be almost like middle management. I think the 2 years we won the 1000, I was driving like the lead chase truck with 2 or 3 guys. Okay. And obviously a race like the Baja 1000, that's a big point to point full chase race. There are a lot of logistical items that are much different than King of the Hammers. Since we talk, or y'all talk in this podcast a lot about the 4-wheel drive thing and get into racing occasionally, a lot of the listeners probably have some familiarity with King of the Hammers and the way that it works, but there's really no off-road racing that I'm aware of in the US anymore that is full chase. In other words, like in Mexico, once that race starts, any problem that the race car encounters, we can pretty much go anywhere and do anything as a pit crew. And that doesn't happen really in the US because of safety concerns and all sorts of permitting issues, right? And like an event like King of the Hammers that's highly regulated and has a very special permitting process. We can't just run out, to mile 50 and help replace a transfer case or whatever, right? Yeah.
So are you saying that the permitting process isn't the same in Mexico?
Believe it or not, it's kind of the Wild West out there.
Blew Jimmy's mind.
Yeah. I mean, if you've been down there for a race, it's just incredible, the things that you can see. And it's neat. And everything, it's not to take away from either event and how good it can be. But from the crew perspective, it's certainly when you're raised down there and you build experience in Mexico, it gives you a really solid foundation, for coming back here, and it allows you to focus because you know that your job exists within the confines of the pits. Yeah. And so you take the experience, the preparation, and kind of lock it into a few zones. It's less for us to worry about. But I'm certainly fortunate to have had those other experiences as a a good way to prep and gain knowledge.
Yeah. So what are some of your responsibilities, or what is your responsibility as crew chief on a team like Randy Slauson? And for those who don't know, Slauson is a 3-time king. There's nobody that has been a 4-time king yet, but there's three-time kings, correct?
That's correct.
And so
Can you name them?
Shannon, Campbell, and wasn't Lauren the other one?
Nope.
No, Shearer was the other one. Shearer.
Yeah.
So yeah, Shearer Campbell and Slauson. So, and when you're talking about logistics of getting a winning race program for King of the Hammers together and make it as successful as possible, what do you have to do to make that happen?
Yeah. So I think, the first major disclaimer is that because I have my own business and work for myself, I stay pretty busy. And because Randy is an owner-operator racer, right? He builds his own cars, races his own cars, preps his own cars. It works out pretty good for both of us because there's a lot of, we can have a few conversations and leading up to a race. He pretty much knows what he has to bring to get the job done. Most of the prep, pit boxes, he has some really good employees, like Adam Sischina that works for him. He puts together, he works on the cars all the time, preps them. He knows exactly what they need, what our most likely spare parts are going to be. So he does a lot of the hands-on prep as far as putting pit boxes and spare parts together in the trailer, gets all that stuff ready to go. He works with Randy every day. So obviously they can work that portion of it out. And then when it comes, about this time, crunch time, when we're a couple weeks ahead of the race, we've got a very regular team of friends and family that have been a part of Randy's race team long before I was around. And they're, pretty fiercely loyal, which is great. We have a really good feel every time that King of the Hammers comes around. We kind of know who's going to show up, and it's rarely anybody's first rodeo. So
that's nice.
Yeah. So that from a planning standpoint, it makes it easy and it becomes less of a time demand on me. But what's kind of cool about it is it lets us, there's always the week lead up to the race that includes all of the pre-running and the qualifying and all that kind of stuff. We can show up on site, and at that point pretty much becomes a full-time job to line everything out and kind of talk about our strategy. Randy will spend a few days pre-running. His current co-driver is his cousin, Dustin Emick, and they'll go out, with one of the play cars and run rock trails and kind of figure out their lines and where they want to be. We'll start developing a strategy if there are sections of the course, like the years that we've had to go up backdoor, right? Yep. And we just come up with a plan as far as when we want to run it, how we want to do it. Do we want to deploy, a winch line ahead of time? All those sorts of strategies. We work the majority of all this stuff out on the lake bed. So it's firsthand information. Of course, like King of the Hammers is so crazy because everything changes, and that those rock trails stay public, really up until the day of the race.
That morning. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you don't, pre-running in the desert is one thing for some of these other events, like in Mexico, you'll have farmers and there's roads and there's some stuff that changes, but it doesn't involve big round things that like to roll around. Yep. And the trails at Hammers are very dynamic. And so if you try to get too, caught up in the plan ahead of time, it's a waste. It doesn't do you any good. Yeah. But we get down,
for example, on that point, I mean, it was 3 years ago, the big rock at the top of Chocolate Thunder that everyone had to pivot around, that moved and rolled down the hill a little bit. Right. And now the whole upper half of Chocolate Thunder is completely changed in the middle of race week.
Sure.
And then I think it was last year, another big rock got winched, pulled out of the way. Someone was trying to winch up and over something. They were stuck. And instead of them moving, the rock moved.
Sure.
And that put this massive rock in the dead middle of Chocolate Thunder in the middle of the week last week.
Right.
So all the pre-running that was done, it's like, oh my God, Chocolate Thunder is a whole new obstacle now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so in the time that Randy is pre-running and trying to figure that stuff out with Dustin and, so there'll be just a little that they need from me that week as far as like, if we come down to figuring out a winch point or some recovery gear or anything, again, the guiding principle is just like quick and fast. If we've if we're climbing back door and we know that we're going to winch, we'll get with Justin at Factor 55 and we'll have an extension that is designed specifically for the line and our car and where we want to be. And it gets taped to a roll bar. It's ready to rock and roll. So we get to that point whenever we pull the trigger, we know we got to get this done, and the co-driver can snag that thing and deploy it, and we can be on our way in no time. So while they're doing some of that on the trail side, it allows me time to kind of split things out. KOH is unique in the fact that you have two physical locations for remote pits. And the first one, right, you typically have the opportunity to visit twice, but once you've cleared lap one, it's out of the picture. And depending on, attendees and the weather, you can send someone out there and you can get them back really quick, or sometimes you don't really see them again for the rest of the day. So planning your fueling and your manpower needs, it's very event specific and, condition dependent, because traffic and weather and all that stuff can kind of affect whether we plan on getting those people back.
Yeah.
It's also rig specific, but your rig, but how many gallons your rig can carry and how far the rig should be able to go. Right. Sure.
Yep.
And so knowing that helps you plan those things out. But every crew chief, for the most part, has got that challenge ahead of them
totally
to figure out where they're going to add gas, where they're going to have it, how they're going to set it up.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, luckily it's KOH is, even though I agree with the sentiment that it's, probably the toughest one-day off-road race in the world, based on the terrain that's covered. From a mileage standpoint, it's really not far, especially, compared to other desert racing, which works out great because most Ultra 4 cars don't, physically, they don't have the ability to carry fuel like a trophy truck does, right? It's not uncommon to find 90, 100, 110 gallon fuel cells in a trophy truck. And, I can pretty confidently say that there's half
15, 20 gallons.
Well, I was going to say in 4,400, I don't think there'd be anybody that's half of that. Wow. 4550 would be probably max.
That's
and it's just
heavy,
packaging, right? Yep. As far as you're going to make a vehicle that can get through these rock trails, you don't have that type of room and you don't want to deal with that type of weight, especially when, the overall race is in the 200 mile range. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
How much does gas weigh per gallon? Do you know that figure?
Yeah, really close to 7.5.
Okay, so it's similar to water. Water is 8 pounds per gallon. So 7.5 per gallon. Okay.
Yeah, right. So when you're talking about some of the trucks, some of the trucks that desert race, that's a significant fuel load, for sure. And it's all built into your suspension tuning and how the car handles. So that's something that's kind of unique about King of the Hammers. You get a hybrid off-road race and you're going to start running into these weird challenges that don't really exist in other places.
Yeah.
But anyways, so our fueling strategy has always been pretty convenient. The majority of race bombers have a Jeep Speed style cell that is rated at 32 gallons. So the usables in the 28 range, something like that. Typically we can do all of our fueling at main, which logistically helps quite a bit. Just one spot for all your safety stuff.
Is that kind of intentional, or are you guys just
well, it started, I think, mostly as kind of the luck of the draw, the way that the course has kind of always been. I mean, that's what's so nice about, Randy's situation is there's very few people that would, have the experience that have been around there since day one. And so as the race has developed and kind of some of that stuff is very routine as far as the desert lap and the rough mileage and then the rock laps and the way that it all works out. Once he found that cell and was able to accommodate it in the chassis, a lot of the early cars were closer to the 20 gallon range.
Okay.
And some of the desert laps it didn't work out really well because in off-road racing, whether you're talking 4,400 or trophy trucks, you're lucky if you can get 3 miles to the gallon. That's great.
Yeah. I've heard on average 1 to 1.5 miles per gallon is pretty not uncommon.
Wow.
If I had to guess in 44, I would think it's somewhere in the 2 range, but we're not talking about a very big difference. So
he's got a roughly 28 gallon usable fuel tank.
60 to 70 miles.
Well, so the cool thing is that the bomber cars are so light and his engines are never really that rowdy. They don't have to be.
Gotcha.
The car is one of the cleanest, simplest vehicles, and it's always the lightest in 4,400 that I've seen. going through tech that
so
week.
he can get 3 miles per gallon.
Yeah. 3 to 3.5 has been good when everything is running correctly. And so then all of a sudden, it's, if you've got a 70-mile desert lap or whatever, it makes it, you've got a pretty decent safety margin there to get that done. When we've staged fuel out, before, and like you say, every vehicle's different. There's a lot of bombers that race, and some of them are still in the smaller cell. So, those teams are likely taking some amount of fuel at pit 1. And the neat thing about Ultra 4 and 4400 is there's so many different shapes and sizes of vehicles. Yeah. It's not like a desert race where at a glance,
everybody looks like the same format.
Yeah. Everybody in trophy truck, if you're 20 feet away, they're going to look very similar. In 4400, you've seen there's all sorts of different hammers out there, right? For that, to drive that nail. So,
which is also a lot of fun. I think, the trophy truck world has been around for so long that they've found a solution that works very well for their type of racing, but King of the Hammers is still fairly fresh. And they're still trying to figure out like what type of vehicle and what shape and what size and how much fuel and all these things is the optimal to do this race. And we haven't figured that out yet.
I totally agree. Yeah. And just the hybrid nature of the event, right? The way that it started, it's like, this is one of the most awesome collaborations of rock trails in any one place. And so it's like, what one vehicle can run all of these rock trails, and then let's see who can get between them all the quickest. It's like,
and who can do over 100 miles an hour out in the desert.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a unique challenge, in today's world. Sometimes people don't like the word hybrid, but it's because of the nature of it. You're always compromising in one way or another. And because, like an independent suspension car is the go-to typically in the desert, but there's still a lot of things about a salt axle that make sense when the trails are rough. So it's great. It's cool to see different solutions. And, up until this last run by Raul, it's kind of always being mixed up, which is pretty neat. Yeah. And so it'll be really interesting to see how things go this year. And it's supposed to get harder every year. And, that's kind of been an up and down deal, but you never know. I mean, that's part of the excitement of it, right? The trails get a little different, and occasionally you find those challenges and those just the different trail conditions where the bomber car works out as a very efficient tool to get them done. So
there's something to be said for simplicity in a race where attrition is still your biggest enemy.
You're right.
Totally.
Yeah.
Where the race is so complicated, there's something to be said about a simple car.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. Well, so we talked a little bit about fuel. What other hurdles do you go through when trying to plan for an event like this?
Yeah. So because this isn't, we hit on earlier kind of the fact that this isn't a full chase race, just like anything else off-road wise in the US. So once we've cleared lap 1, we have a main pit and a remote pit, right?
And so lap 1 is the desert lap.
That's right.
Which is typically roughly 100 miles in the desert.
I think if you average everything from the last 5 or 6 years, it's probably in the 80, 85 range. Because some have been longer, some have been a little shorter. I think in the pre-show this year, they said that this is close to 70.
Okay.
So it'd be a little shorter than in the past.
All right.
But anyway, so yes, so if you can have a successful day, get the desert lap knocked out, then pit 1 is out of the question. There's nothing else to go on there. So between main and 2, depending on our strategy and the resources for any given year, in the past, we've been able to kind of have like floating resources as far as spare parts. They can bounce back and forth. Since both of those pit locations are fixed, it's kind of a unique setup for desert racing that, if you only have a few high quality assets, to be able to move them back and forth as the race is proceeding is a pretty unique. And for us, it's a very helpful situation. It helps us stay staffed.
And main and 2 aren't terribly far apart.
Sure.
Right. Main to 1, like you were saying.
Yeah.
You could see somebody in a matter of hours, or you could see them at the end of the race.
The problem between main and 1 is that the only good off-road route typically would involve crossing the race course. And that's obviously a big no. That's not going to happen. So you've got to send resources effectively out Boone Road and down 247 and then out. It's something that's hard to count on. It's great when you get those people back, but you can't really plan on it.
Right.
So,
but to go from main to remote pit 2.
Correct. Yeah.
Maybe an hour.
it can be done quicker in the right vehicle for sure. The problem with race day is you have lots of spectators, and obviously you got to use your best judgment making your way through there.
Are you crossing the race course at all going to 2?
I don't think so. Not typically.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you do when you're at the pit to get on to the side where the pit is.
Okay, where the pits are.
But I don't think you cross at all.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
because usually if you look out at the course map, is summarized and over the years or whatever, it's like a big giant ring. And so you're able to kind of work through the middle in that the main drag off the lake bed out of Hammertown. And then, so if, like a razor, if you have certain components where you're only, from a spares perspective, you're only carrying a couple of, it's not very hard to move those back and forth, or at least have them available at either. And, when we show up to King of the Hammers, we're there to win the race. If there is something that is not able to be fixed in 10 or 15 minutes, the odds are good that
you're out of it.
Yeah, that we're not going to plan on beating up a bunch of other components, right? Or throwing something in the middle of the race and risking
swapping a transmission at main pit. In the middle of the day.
I think we did a transfer case a couple of years ago, and that's pretty extensive in one of those cars. The interior and the seats are coming out, and it's that's about as big of a as something that we'd undertake, and it would be under the right circumstances and how Randy's feeling. So
here's an interesting question on kind of that topic of we're there to win it, right? Because I think I know what Randy would say, but I'm curious if you align with that as well, or what your thoughts are.
Sure.
There's a ton of people out there that are like, if you can just stay and beat the attrition rates and then race to your car's capacity, that you have a good shot of being successful that day, whatever success is. But are you saying then that you guys are always trying to push the vehicle because your main goal, the only form of success for you is winning? And if you're not winning, then you haven't succeeded. Even if you finish the race in 3rd or 4th that day, does it feel as worse? Do you feel like you failed the race more than breaking something, trying to push and win it?
So you mean if you ain't first, you're last?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, the program obviously it's Randy's world. It's everything to him, right? He's building these cars and prepping the cars and racing them. And like we hit on earlier, his experience out there is extraordinary. It's one of our most valuable assets.
Yeah.
He spends almost all the free time in the year that he has an opportunity to get down there and wheel, he does. Yeah, I think that in his mind, since that's the race that he focuses on, sometimes the only race in a given year, his plan is just to, if he's not in contention on race day, we would keep running. But if we had a problem that we knew that, if you're down for 30 or 45 minutes based on what's happening, that there's not really a chance, then yeah, I think he feels like it's tough to beat equipment up at that point. He's just not, it's awesome to finish that race, but because of his past success and his experience out there, he's there to win the thing.
Yeah.
So those, staying up on positioning and splits and everything is important.
Yeah.
And it helps us make those decisions.
Gotcha. Because I know that there's a lot of people that go out there and they're like, man, if we break something, then it's like part of their feeling of success to fix it, get back up and running and finish the race.
Sure.
And it doesn't sound like that's Randy's MO.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's going to push the car and himself as far as they can go to make sure he's in first place and wins. And if anything happens and he's loses because he's not in first, right?
Right.
Then the race is done for him, kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, so when you're a race car builder and a chassis builder and a designer and everything that he is, a race car is a complex animal. Even though his cars are simple, there's still a whole lot of systems that have to come together and have their best day for you to win. And so you're always relying on, an engine builder, transmission. There's so many different things that can cause you grief. We went together through a couple of years where we were having gear issues and rear gear issues. And then, he developed a new relationship with TubeWorks. We got all that stuff squashed and have had zero problems.
Nice.
So that's kind of part of it too. It's like, he's putting his best foot forward in a vehicle that he built through trial and error, over the last decade and a half. And it would certainly be disheartening if it's some sort of chassis issue, but that typically hasn't been the problem ever. There's just so many components that, like I said, have to have their best day. And so something like that comes up and he knows it's going to put us down, then, I think it becomes a pretty easy decision that we'll just save the car and live to fight another day. Yeah. But with the experience, just the know-how and the fact that that car is hard to beat out there. And when combined with him as a driver, we're lining up thinking that, it's always a podium and, we're going to try for first. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but
it totally does. It's just a different mindset, because I remember the first kind of like realization of that reality hit me last year listening to you guys during the 4400 day, because I was helping out with comms for Amber on the day before during EMC, and we're just like, oh yeah, no, okay, we need a spare part here, we need to make sure gas is here for you, blah blah blah. Okay, we'll make sure that happens. Like, our goal is to fix a part on the vehicle and get her back up and running so she can finish the race, right?
Sure.
But listening to you guys, completely different mindset over the radio of really your main focus was splits,
right,
and the time, and where he's at and how the car is feeling. If you're like, hey, we just need to check, I feel something bolt or loose rattling on this side of the car, check it when we get to the pit,
sure,
kind of thing, and then you just keep going.
Yeah, that's a neat segue, because it comes into the comms thing. One of the nice things about having the fixed course race, right, where the pits are not moving, it allows the use of either a manual with a person, a manual repeater,
manual relay kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Or, an automated repeater. And we're excited because we might have to rename the radio company. I was thinking about that on my drive over here, but my official race radio, maybe? I don't know.
But,
that's I think that's where we're at for this year. So super excited that Tyler jumped in, and we have a repeater unit that Randy and I purchased from Dust Junkies, a group that has been out there for several years, racing and chasing and helping all classes, people from all over get across the finish line. They had a repeater that we had used in the past, and it came up for sale last year, and Randy and I bought it. And through my company, I had already applied and received a repeater frequency, a registration with the FCC. And so, Tyler, we really appreciate that you helped us get that thing all set up. And that is a huge part of our program, because I want as much data as I can get on race day to help figure the splits like you're talking about, right? And for anyone that's not super familiar with racing, because in King of the Hammers and most forms of desert racing, you're racing against the clock. Based on qualifying position, you have racers that are starting at all different times, right? Leaving the line. There's no feasible way that you could get 100
everybody off the line at the same time.
Cars, out on a course safely. That would just never happen. It doesn't happen in desert racing. It doesn't happen at King of the Hammers. So everyone has a start time, and there's only one other guy on the track or on the course that has the same start time as you. So the 99 other vehicles either started behind you or in front of you. And so it gets complicated when everyone gets mixed up and you're trying to figure out what is their elapsed time on course. And so when you look at the difference between who's being reported in first, who has the shortest amount of elapsed time, they might not be the first vehicle that you see every time crossing the finish line. They could be back 10 or 20 spots, and they might be the vehicle that's in first. So we're trying to keep an eye on that. We have, a person in the pits that's writing car numbers down whenever they come through.
Gotcha.
And then between that, some information from the live stream. And in the last couple of years with Starlink, right? You've seen a lot of Starlink units out there, and
there were so many last year.
Yeah. A great friend of the team, Justin Marquand with Unique Componentry. I have one of his full mobile Starlinks that you might have seen on some of the posts. I've used that thing.
I got mine done and got it back recently.
You did.
It's
fantastic. A piece of art, huh?
It is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So having that, things get hectic out there just because you have service showing on your cell phone. The odds that it's going to refresh and you're going to be able to get accurate tracker data is pretty slim. But when you can bring your own high-speed wireless internet, you've got a good team, you have a repeater. I'm famous for using my wife at home too, because when the cell when the cell carriers are stressed, the data is typically the first thing to drop.
Yeah.
But you can often still make a phone call. So if you're able to call somebody that knows what they're doing and is able to have the free time to be in front of a computer, that can be a super nice way to get information on the fly. So
Gotcha.
I'll take as many data sources as I can to try to get, the splits figured out. And you just make, in the heat of battle, you just make use the best info you can get and try to make the best decision.
Yeah.
The tracker stuff isn't always accurate. That's just the nature of the beast. When you've got high value vehicles that are racing around in the dirt and the rocks, it's never going to be perfect. But between that, keeping an eye on the coverage, right? King of the Hammers is the most advanced coverage of an off-road race that has ever existed.
Totally. In terms of the video feeds and everything. Yeah.
If all you've ever done is watch that thing on TV, you're still doing pretty good. I've never seen a live broadcast of the race coverage because
you're always in the pits.
Yeah, always out there. But
it's impressive. We're out there the past 4 or 5 years in a row, right? And a lot of people, we set up TVs in our camp area at Hammertown Heights Estates. And a lot of people will, if they're not helping on a pit crew that day, instead of going to one of the spectator areas, we'll just hang out in our kitchen area and watch the TVs because the coverage is amazing.
They'll go down for the start.
Yeah,
sure.
Watch all the race cars take off.
Smell the race fuel.
Smell the race fuel. Feel it in their chest as they accelerate away. And then they go back up to camp and watch the rest of the race from the TV.
I'll tell you, man, they do a great job. And it's so even that can be an asset that I've used in the past. And if we've had, like I said, some really cool pit alliances over the years, both with Dust Junkies. We raced with Rufus last year and we were in their main pit. We're able to watch some of that stuff, and even that can be super helpful. It's not designed for that, right? It's like this is unofficial information and use it at your own risk, but every bit of data you can get is helpful when you're trying to keep your driver up to date with accurate splits and figure out where we need to push and where maybe we have a little extra time.
Gotcha. So is that a big thing that Randy's looking for, is figure out where the splits are, how close he is behind somebody or how close somebody is behind him, so that he knows if he needs to push the car more, or is he just all out, just going and like, don't talk to me, I'm in his zone? Sure.
So, the best relevant info I can give you is from 21, right? The last race that we won. And we were in a position there where the coverage wasn't super great. And it was kind of like I'm saying, it was one of those unofficial things where we were pretty sure that we were in first and we had a comfortable lead, but it wasn't really being reported that way. So that put us as far as like doubting yourself and like, are you really making the right decision? Am I really going to tell him that he can cruise because he's in first, or is he really, that was a very stressful afternoon for sure. But he has some really great partners that have pretty premier spots down there near the Jumbotron, right? With King Shocks and PCI race radios. So on that particular year, by the time he had cleared Maine for the last time, and since once that had happened, we knew that, or maybe even cleared pit 2. And we knew that really it's him and the car and the co-driver are the only people at that point that are going to help him cross the finish line, or another competitor. That's part of it too. But if you're in first, you're not getting help from another competitor. So, so we knew basically that our job, other than comms and updates, was pretty much done. I ran from the main pit down to that zone, and I was bouncing back and forth with King and Oribe down there in the King Shocks booth and Scott Steinbrenner PCI. And as a team, we were like getting all the data we could from everybody and trying to, both of those guys have tons of off-road race experience, right? Yeah. They're down at all of the big races, Baja 1000, all that stuff. I see them there and I see them at King of the Hammers. So it's really cool to have allies like that. And that, we were all in it for the same reason. And eventually it kind of came up to where between us and some of the other team members, we were pretty certain on where we stood, and we're able to tell Randy, like, in any desert race, if you're an all-out driver, odds are good you're not going to be successful. There's definitely places to push and places not to. Winning short course is a completely different matter, and a lot of that is just run, and if you have any chance of winning first, that's how you're going to be. Typically in an endurance race, it's not going to do well for you. So. And it doesn't matter what you're driving. But so at that point, we were able to kind of give some information that was, as confident as we could be. There's always the caveat that something could be wrong, right? Someone's tracker wasn't working all day. But as far as we could tell, you're in first. You've got this type of buffer. Use that information as you will, but we think that, you could take it easy. this last 20, 25 miles, and it was correct.
Nice. So leading up to race day, it sounds like a lot of the responsibilities are just making sure people are planned to be at the pits. You know who's going where, when you can, if you can count on people coming back from one, or you're just like, yeah, you guys are out there. If you come back, cool, we can reallocate you. If not, enjoy your day. Doing that, what spare parts? It sounds like you guys don't carry a whole lot of big parts out to pits or main pit or anything, just because if it's a big part and it takes more than 30 minutes, you're just call it for the day, save the car.
Yeah, we're not too much focus on that, which, lets us run the way that we want to run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So so
you don't have a lot of parts to spread out between the pits and allocate those resources.
Right. A couple basic pit boxes that just cover, routine things. When
like
you have
fluids, belts.
Yeah, totally. And when you have someone that has run that race a dozen or more times, it's cool because you kind of can focus in on the things that are often fail and the things that don't, and you just prioritize it. If you can make your whole program run quick and fast and dirty, to be honest, kind of the way that the car runs, then it all it's harmonious at that point. We can react quickly, and it's kind of like putting all your eggs in one basket to an extent, I guess, but it certainly it's paid off before, and it's allowing us to respond quickly, and he's moving quickly. It all just kind of works together. You don't want to get bogged down in the crap.
And if you're not bringing big parts, you don't need a lot of tools.
Sure.
So you're sort of low key or streamlined on that stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just being involved in the sport in that area for so long. I mean, we have lots of allies, and it's always been, so huge, right? Everyone in off-road racing at large, whether it's a couple broken down Jeeps on the Rubicon that the Toyota guys got to help, or it's somebody at King of the Hammers where
this is why we had you on the podcast, Nick.
It's one big family, which is awesome. Everybody helping everybody. We've lent stuff and we've requested stuff. And I don't think, we've really, everyone's out there.
What goes around comes around.
Yeah. Kind of everyone understands, it's a common goal, and there's really egos rarely get in the way, which is really awesome. If someone has something to help and they don't need it, or vice versa, it's really cool. And I've seen that in Mexico and at King of the Hammers and Vegas to Reno. It's a really awesome community to be a part of. To be honest, it's another thing that just aids in kind of that lean and mean program, and just keeping, bare necessities, react quickly, have just enough to get the job done to get the car across the line.
Gotcha.
I mean, a perfect world, if that thing falls apart as we pull up to Miles to give our post-race interview, you did it just right.
You did just right. Yeah. So, okay. And then on race day, there's a lot of just data and communication.
Yeah. And I guess because you kind of asked a question and I kind of got off track, but as far as the, so leading up to it, so I've spent, just from a career standpoint, I've spent a considerable amount of time in a site supervisor, project manager, construction. My degree is in construction management, and I worked for a big oil and gas company for about 6 years and flew around the world and put together gas compressor retrofit projects. So big stationary natural gas burning engines. So I would fly to Kentucky and meet a group of iron workers and welders, just old crusty trade dudes that have been around forever, and kind of have to win their trust and say hey, cool, check this out. This is our project. These are our parts. This is our timeline, the schedule. This is how we're going to do it and what we need to do. And kind of figure out quickly what everyone's strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah.
You run your own company, totally. You're familiar with that. You've hired and fired probably. So we have like I said, a good core, real loyal people that have been around for a while. And we collectively kind of know everyone's strengths and weaknesses. So lining everybody out as far as how are we going to put our best foot forward, putting these people in what spot for fueling. Maybe, that's one of the most basic pit functions that's pretty similar on a bunch of different cars. So if we're in a shared pit strategy scenario, maybe we have fuelers that are kind of addressing all the cars, and that's great. That allows us, the people that have touched the Bombers the most, to kind of focus on looking for common issues, taking care of the driver, the co-driver, making sure that they're calm and cool and focused. And, the less they have to worry about, the more they can focus on getting that car across the line. Yeah. So the prep side, kind of see who showed up this year and kind of help, get everyone on the same page. That's all kind of the pregame stuff. And then, yes, like you said, once we've got the car on the line that morning, everything, heated up and ready to go, and the guys are in it, then it switches. A lot of just analytical stuff.
Okay.
The pit strategies, all that has already kind of been laid out. The fuel strategy is what it is. And you were just at the last minute, making sure everyone's in the right spot. And then, obtaining and reporting the most accurate data.
Wow. Are there any other teams that you keep a very close eye on throughout the day? Like they line up at the start line and you're tracking their start times throughout the day kind of thing?
Totally. Yeah, it was a little cleaner, like when in some of those big shared pit situations, like I referenced before, like at Dust Junkies, there was always a guy and a girl, a couple that was their job, right? They're sitting right there by the start line, and they've been around. All these people have done a lot of desert racing, and they kind of know the who's who. So and then based on qualifying, like if there was someone that wasn't on your radar, like Paul Wolf, right? What an awesome upstart kind of story. And now all of a sudden he's in the front. So we should probably write his number down and keep an eye on him too. But that's just a great example of, other than the names that we all know, when you see someone that sets the pole or whatever, you're like, yeah, that'd be a great one to keep an eye on. So kind of build that list out maybe into the top, 20 or so vehicles. And then in the event that someone that's fast maybe had a mishap in qualifying and they wind up, coming from the rear, we better write them down too. And Randy's been a great example of that. He's won the race from the rear a couple times, which is pretty awesome. You just kind of sneak up on him, right? And so, qualifying is important, but depending on the course and a whole bunch of other factors, there's so many times out there in that race that you could be better off sometimes being farther back. There's some weird accident or someone rolls over and you stay out of a delay that you would have caught if you were up in it.
Are you keeping track of the traffic jams in the canyons too?
Not typically, because the nice thing is that, even though the bomber car is certainly at its best in the worse the rock trails are, the better that car is going to be. Yeah. It is fast in the desert. I think one of my favorite stories of all time, and it might've been the first year that I was kind of in the crew chief role with Randy, but Rob McCachran, just anybody that's not familiar, one of the greatest trophy truck racers that we've ever had, was there, and he was driving an independent IFS car owned by Greg Adler. His job, he was there to do the desert lap. Okay. In that particular race, I feel like we were in the teens as far as a start position. Greg Adler with Rob McCack, the car with Rob driving, was in front of us. So somewhere around Cougar Buttes, I don't recall if it was Randy and his brother Mike or Dustin, but I think it was Dustin. Maybe this is 16 or 17. They caught that IFS car with the legend Rob McCachran behind the wheel somewhere around Cougar Buttes on the desert lap. We're up behind him, moving faster. So if you're not familiar with racing, it's what we like to call nerfing. If you've tried all your other options and you're not getting someone to move, the only other thing really
Rubbin's
you can do is start tapping on that rear bumper and let them know you're there, right? Who knows? Maybe their mirror fell off, or they are having audio issues. If if they're not getting feedback in their headset, maybe their co-driver can't tell them that you're back there. Whatever. If they're not moving, it's time to start tapping. And so at the finish line, Greg had done his rock laps. The car crossed the finish line. Randy was there. Rob,
was he not happy about it?
No, he was. He was super fucking cool about it.
That's cool.
He was like, "Oh man," Randy walked over and he's like, "Hey, you see these dents on the rear bumper?" He's like, "Can you autograph over or whatever?" And I was just like, I was like, "Dude, this is a desert racing hero who was driving in the desert." Randy caught and was tapping on his rear bumper, telling him to get out of the way, and he was super cool about it. And so that stuck with me. But how that ties back to your question about getting tangled up in the rocks. So if we run the way we want to, we've had a pretty good first lap. Historically, by volume, Randy's probably passed more people in the desert lap than anywhere else, which is a little counterintuitive. But at the beginning of the race and with qualifying, you can get all sorts of weird arrangements, as far as physical position. So with that being said, even though there are repeating rock trails between laps 2 and 3, typically the hard stuff is on 3, and that's by design, right? We've had fairly good luck as far as not winding up in any of the major shit show trail tampon situations. Thank goodness. And God forbid we do. Having the lightest, smallest, most capable rock rolling car is a pretty good spot to be as far as working your way through those things.
Yeah, because that was going to be my question. I know that you were talking earlier, the guys go out and do their pre-running. beforehand to kind of figure out the trails, what lines they want to take. And I was curious if they kind of plan on possible traffic jams, being like, all right, if traffic's backed up here, where are we going? And that way you guys can be watching where the traffic jams happen and relay that info to them. Be like, all right, there's a huge backup at Plaque Line. Sure. There's a huge backup at Plaque Line. You guys better, find a way around or think of plan B or C, whatever you guys had.
Yeah. I mean, I think we certainly would. And that's some of the stuff that we, that's the KOH week strategy stuff probably that we'd be, discussing once we arrive, because if it's a lap 2 thing and they see something sketchy, then by all means, your scenario is absolutely applicable. But like this course is maybe a good example because you have that weird deal just west of Pit 2 in the mountains where I think in the live show, there's 2 VCPs, right? And as far as at that point, the way it's reported is that once you check in here, however you want to get over the mountains to this one is fine. It was very loosely defined. Interesting. Okay. And so as of right now, the way that I understand it, there's effectively 3 trails, and the farther north you go, they get easier. But the farther north you go, you've covered more ground. Yeah, so if you can take the first line and make it over the hill, you've run the least amount of distance. But if it's a situation where you're going to get stuck, then maybe it's not worth it. However, there are also bypasses. So I think that's a 2 and 3 scenario there. So that's a great example of a spot that they would pre-run, figure out where they want to be. And like many things in life, you don't just have a plan A, you better have a B, C, D, because you get in that situation. And if there's some lappers, people that are left over when you're on lap 3, then you better have a plan to get around them. So that it's certainly something to consider, but it's the type of thing, that we'll have to figure out next week.
Yeah. So speaking of next week, well, first off, I keep wanting to ask this question. I keep forgetting to. How many people are on the crew? Like how many people does the crew consist of? Yeah. So you keep saying you're a pretty lean crew.
I'd say our core group on any given year is probably only 10 to 12.
Wow. That is pretty lean.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then we've been fortunate in the past because, like I said, we've had some of those alliances with other teams or other groups, like the volunteer group with Dust Junkies, where we've basically got a couple fuelers that are dedicated to that job. And so they wouldn't be included in my number because they're helping everybody. But yeah, I would say it would take a minimum of 15 people probably to successfully pull it off. Yeah. And so, but some of those can be shared, with other teams or other pits. Yeah. So but our
which is one really cool thing about Ultra 4 in general is that we've alluded to it a few times that people and teams are willing to share stuff and they're willing to help each other out on the trail.
Sure.
And I think especially with this race, KOH, a lot of that is because we're still fighting the course. Right. The attrition rate is so high that people are still fighting the course after 15 years, 16 years, whatever it's been.
Absolutely.
We haven't found a way to successfully and consistently beat the course every year. Right. So I think everyone's still fighting the course, and it creates this camaraderie of helping.
Sure.
Do you think it's ever going to get to the point where teams do get uber competitive, like trophy trucks and Baja, where they're not helping because the attrition rate isn't as high anymore? People are able to conquer the course and it becomes super competitive and teams aren't going to be necessarily helping each other on or off the course.
So, as far as helping and I think I said in one of the earlier things that if you're on course and you or your co-driver can't figure out a problem, the only other person that is allowed to help you is another competitor. And I think I said that. So if you're in first, you wouldn't expect to get help from the person that's behind you. And that's just, everyone kind of gets that, there's certain situations where they're not going to stop. If there's a medical condition, I would expect everyone out there.
Or fire or something.
Yeah. That's all part of it. And we're all here at the end of the day, you want to see that guy tomorrow. So, but in the pits and parts go, if you have one thing and it's a likely part that you'll need, I think everyone understands that, you may not be willing to give that thing up. And, especially if it's you and that guy in the race, it's almost like an unspoken agreement. But even in trophy trucks where it might be more competitive, I've still witnessed some really great acts of generosity. And I don't really expect that to change. Off-road racing has never really, there's glory for sure, but it's never really been about, making money. It's really about spending money and having a good time. And so in that particular scenario, I wouldn't expect that is is likely to go away. There's certainly that competitive edge, but everyone does what they can within a reasonable expectation to help other people out.
Without mentioning names, is there a team that never really helps?
Honestly, not.
Okay.
Not that I could recall, like offhand.
Yeah.
I mean, there is kind of that unspoken thing. Like if we're in second and we walk to the guy that's in first to his pit to ask for something, like, we probably just wouldn't even do it. I mean, and because it's like, we get it.
It's because you guys are actually competing at that moment,
active,
right?
Yeah.
You guys are
So
it's first versus second, but the dude that is like, you'd walk down to the dude that's 13th right now,
right?
Because there's probably no chance that he's going to get you.
Sure. Or maybe his guys would already come to us, It's just like, I think because of that, everyone kind of understands the deal, and most of the people that are running in front have done it before and have been through this, and they've been either the ones giving out parts or asking for them.
So it seems like the top 10 finishers now from the past few years are all pretty much the same people. They get mixed up each year.
Sure. Yeah.
But it seems like, for the top 10, we're starting to get to a point where we're figuring out the course and we're starting to beat the course now. So I was curious if the competitiveness is going to ramp up now because of that.
Yeah, it could. And I mean, that's one of the unique things though about this race and Johnson Valley more specifically. I've traveled all over the world and been in some pretty cool places, and just the geology in Johnson Valley is so incredible that you can go from canyon to canyon and you see all different color rocks and different shapes. And like, if you were a geology nut, I mean, you just have a field day out there, because it is such a unique place. And it's so active and dynamic, and our recreation there, it only makes it more active. It changes everything. Yeah. So like the fact that the course is always a little different, that there seems to be a couple new trails every year. I think it's dynamic enough that I'm not sure, going to Mexico and racing, that's been going on for 55 years or something, right? The Baja 1000. So a lot of those trails, whether they use the goat trail or they don't, like everyone kind of knows the deal and they've pre-run it before. But yeah, down there, it's such a unique thing in the off-road world with the rocks, and that it changes so much. I don't know. I'm not really sure it'd ever get to that point unless, you were in a hovercraft or something.
Helicopter racing in Johnson Valley. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about next week, because next week I think is going to be very unique for KOH.
Sure.
Because there's pretty much a lake down there right now.
Yeah. It looks like some of the stuff we've been seeing online the last couple of days might be some Sea-Doo racing opportunities. Maybe.
Exactly.
Got it.
That's where the Sea-Doos are in. Yeah. Okay. So I was curious, is 4,400 going to turn into a jet ski race instead of the 4,400 around the lake bed, out to Cell Phone Bush and back 100 times? Or, what is, does anybody have a plan for?
Yeah, are you going to put a windshield in?
Yeah, like how does this work when we're expecting how much rain and storms we're supposed to be getting during Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday next week?
Sure. Yeah. So, I think a couple things. Obviously, Johnson Valley is the way that it is because it is a desert. It's got some pretty big shielding from a couple key directions that just limit precipitation overall. So it's not to say it won't happen. There's definitely some stuff going to happen on the West Coast. And now that they've already gotten a significant amount of water, just, a little over a week before the event, it's not going to take much more to flood some areas out. So that, all those canyons are there in the first place because of big water movement,
drainage,
right? Yeah, absolutely. So it has happened before and it will happen again. I'm not sure it will be next week, but yeah, there are certain things with trucks in the desert. It's almost a little easier because most like trucks or desert racing cars, the configuration is a little more standard, like we've talked about, and it's been a little more consistent over the years. People have figured out, like with different floor wells and, areas that are closed in, some of the stuff that we've done in the past, had deflectors on the hood so that if you're moving through standing water and you're carrying water over the hood, I mean, you've seen those trucks and some of those buggies, like it's a ramp right into the driver compartment, and you never want that, right? No one wants a lap full of water. But with
go swimming like Bailey did a couple years ago.
Right? But with Ultra 4, there's, the shapes and sizes of the vehicles are just so weird, right? All the tires hang way out. They have to for approach and departure angle. So there's not any fenders to cover tires that are spinning mud and water. It's going to be unique. I think that, we have seen those short course races with these vehicles. So a lot of guys out there are familiar with
Prairie City.
Yeah, with how the cars mud up and where they throw water. If there's standing water, I would expect that there's probably some last minute course diversions. Luckily, most of the places where there's likely to be standing water would probably be pretty easy to be rerouted if that's what has to happen. But as far as how it affects, the pits, man, you've got that section of Hammertown and the majority of the
all
of
the
pits.
Garages right now. Oh, yeah.
That could get really interesting. And I'm a big weather nerd anyway, so I'm definitely watching with bated breath to see how that's all going to pan out. And I'm happy that we're kind of up on the hillside because, as the saying goes, shit and water both roll downhill.
Fair. Well, cool, man. Jimmy, any other questions about logistics and how crews work out at Hammers or Ultra 4?
No, I think we got a really interesting insight with, somebody that's been around it for a while and a top tier in our Ultra 4 crews out there. And I'm sure all crews have their own spin on things, but, it's not, for us, it's not a side that we normally hear about is like, how is it ran? Like, how is we always are interested in like, how was the race car? How did the course go today? How was, was there any parts on the vehicle that, broke or what was catastrophic or what worked fantastic? But we never hear the backside, the engine, kind of that was running the team and the logistics behind that. So I really appreciate you sharing all that information with us.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in where the rubber meets the road, but yeah, I mean, I think anyone that has run that race would tell you that, especially in the off-road world, man, there's such a cool community, and all the teams that are out there are taking a week or more time away from their families and their lives and their livelihood to make it happen, and at the end of the day, kind of put on a good show, right? And give these drivers and an opportunity to go out there and stand on that right there in front of the Jumbotron, in front of everybody, and with the giant check. So it's really cool to be a part of, and I certainly appreciate the situation that I'm in and being able to be a part of that team. It's been an absolute blast, and even though I've done a lot of other desert racing, it would be a lie to say basically to have been a part of such a successful program has been awesome and really great to meet a lot of people, and just I think Randy is he's quite the fan favorite, kind of the race before, of course, is called the Everyman Challenge, but to have a guy that spends just about every day of the year, touching, prepping, building his own car, his own design is unique. Yeah. It doesn't really happen in the desert, conventional desert racing, and to be able to see it still running at King of the Hammers is awesome.
Yeah, I agree. He definitely, in my opinion, he's like the epitome of the 4,400 to every man challenge, like the core of what KOH and Ultra 4 started as, because he doesn't have a massive high dollar program.
Sure.
Like some of these other guys that are now getting, factory sponsorships,
right?
Kind of thing. And he's still winning just as much as more than most other guys out there.
As anyone ever has. Yeah. The race to 4 is on, man.
I know. It's going to be fun to see who hits it first.
And at the end of the day, still a Toyota guy too.
That's true. He's got his luxury pre-runner, as he likes to call it, the Tacoma.
Yeah, stock mobbing.
Oh, that's funny. Well, cool, man. Thanks for coming down, Nick, making the trip into the studio and getting to see you and host you in person this time.
It's been awesome. Yeah. Appreciate it, guys. Super cool opportunity.
Anytime, man. Jimmy, if people want to get a hold of us, how can they do that? Or if they have questions for Nick, let's start there. Nick, if people have questions for you, how can they do that? How can they ask you and talk to you?
Sure. Yeah. I think everyone these days likes to use IG. So at Avalanche Technical is my Instagram tag. The website is similar, and it's got all my other contact information. So www.avalanchetechnical.com. There's a contact form, email address, and maybe even a phone number. So happy to help. Like I said, the community's been great to me and, the people that I've raced with. And yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to answer any questions anyone might have and provide all the help that I could.
Cool. Jimmy, how can people get a hold of us?
Yeah, you can find us over on Instagram as well. I'm over at Snail Trail 4x4. Tyler's at 4x4 Toyota Tyler. You can email us, Jimmy or Tyler, at snailtrail4x4.com, or you can phone in, area code 916-345-4744.
That's it. Good job.
Thank you.
And I guess with that, Jimmy, do you have any final words for everybody out there?
Yeah, through this conversation, I've learned that a lot of the King of the Hammers races comes down to goals. It seems like there's what is the goal of the organization? Is it to finish the race? Is it to finish lap one? Is it
get through tech?
Clear tech. Is it to, finish the race? Is it to get on podium? Is it to be first? I think a lot of it comes down to what the goal of the team is and then doing the best they can to achieve that goal.
Yeah. Nick, any final words for everybody out there?
No, hope to obviously met a lot of you before. Hope to maybe meet some more of you. I don't know when you're going to hear this, but this week, next week, we'll see. At King of the Hammers, we'll be there. Hammertown Heights, just above the infield. That's where we pit. That's where the Bomer main is. Come say hi. And other than that, I hope everyone has a very safe and successful race.
Are you guys pretty open with people coming by, spectators, just saying, hey, what's up, and seeing the car and shaking hands? And
yeah, I think anytime that, you'll find us there. There are times when we're busy. If we are, we'll let you know. But I would say it's so hard to plan anything out there that week. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You don't know what the weather's going to be like. So yeah, if you're in the area, come by, say hi, and look forward to meeting you. And if we're busy at that moment, we'll try another time.
Cool. I like it, man. And with that, everybody, remember out there, keep crawling. Oh, we have jokes.
We have jokes.
I have joke.
Maybe we should say that there are earmuffs for the little ones on this joke. So be cautious. If you got a little one around, maybe pause it.
Okay, so there's 3 guys sitting at a bar, and the first guy's like, hey, man, I'm pretty fast. And his buddy's like, oh, yeah? And he's like, yeah, dude, I might be the fastest man on earth. And they're like, cool, yeah, you should go ahead and submit this to Guinness and see if, they'll award you the prize or whatever. So he goes through the steps, calls out the auditor, and, they're waiting around. So the next day they're at the bar, and second guy says, man, I'm pretty strong. I might be the strongest man on earth. And they're, go through the same thing. They're like, hey, bud, if you think so, go ahead and send it off and see what you can do. So go through the steps, and they send the paperwork off. And on the next day, the third friend is like, dude, I think I have the smallest penis on earth. And they say, really? And he's like, yeah, just, I've been around and all the chicks I've been with, it's, I'm certain it's the smallest dick on earth. They're like, the routine, go ahead and see what you can figure out. And he's like, all right, I will. And so the next week, they all get letters in the mail and they come in. First guy opens it. He's like, dude, it's official. And they're like, yeah, what's that? And he says, I'm the fastest man on earth. Got the letter back. And they have a beer, have a shot. That's fucking awesome. And the second guy, it's like, well, I got mine too. They open it up and they read it. Congratulations. You're the strongest man on earth. They say, fucking hell yeah. So the third guy's like, oh, okay, cool, man. Here we go. Opens his envelope and he just has like a puzzled look on his face. And everyone's like, dude, what's going on? And he's like, who the fuck is Tyler Lordson?
Winner.
Congratulations.
Thank
over
you.
there.
Yeah, that one takes a while, but always good.
That is a good one. It's better than mine. Mine is, why aren't koalas actually bears?
I don't know why.
Because they don't meet the qualifications.
The qualifications. See, he liked it. He laughed more than I do. Your jokes.
Tyler's used to this.
Tyler is used to it. We got a pack of like 600 jokes, so now I've been working my way through them.
Oh, that's the secret. That's cool. You guys are pretty crafty around here. I was watching a basketball game last night, and there was a guy named Jizzle. Jizzle James was this like college basketball player for
That's your new nickname.
Cincinnati, dude. And I was like, at least his dad, right? It's like, hey, this is my favorite Jizzle right here, right? It just makes it real easy.
Yeah.
Daddy's little squirt.
Oh man.